A premium skincare launch hits the market, and at first glance it looks like a win. Marketing is celebrating. Brand awareness is up something like 300%. Social engagement is exploding. Influencers are posting. Impressions are pouring in. Then sales walks into the room with a completely different mood. Revenue came in 22% under target. The product is selling, yes, but not at the speed you'd expect after that kind of hype. Not enough to justify what the launch cost. Finance has an even tougher message. Margins are getting crushed. Costs are popping up everywhere, expedited shipments because demand is landing in weird places, packaging that ended up pricier than the model assumed, and returns that are running at triple the usual rate. And supply chain. Supply chain is staring at a warehouse puzzle. There's 8 months of inventory sitting for a few SKUs, and for others, there's nothing. Out of stock. The demand signal never made it to planning. They forecasted a new premium line using old historical patterns that didn't fit this customer at all. Customer service brings the final piece. Complaints are spiking, but not because people hate the product. The frustration is about late deliveries, damaged boxes, and a loyalty program customers were promised, that operations never actually set up. 5 functions. 5 confident interpretations. 5 systems of record that don't connect. And when the CEO finally forces a cross-functional review, it takes 3 weeks just to get everyone to agree on what the numbers even are. By the time reality gets reconciled, $47 million is just gone. Not because marketing was lying. Not because supply chain was incompetent. Not because finance was asleep. It evaporated because everyone was right inside their own lane, and nobody had the whole map. That 47 million. That's what we're calling the silo tax. Every organization pays it. Most organizations never calculate it. And today, we're going to name it clearly, break down what creates it, and talk about the practical ways leaders can dismantle it with integrated intelligence. I'm Nakel Nakima, and this is the Intelligence Edge. Joining me is a panel of 4 leaders who've each fought this battle from a different side: enterprise transformation, governance, ethics and compliance, and systems architecture. Dr. Lian Zhou is an AI transformation expert across Asia-Pacific, and if there's one thing Dr. Zhou has seen again and again, it's how hard it is to pull organizations out of functional kingdoms and into shared truth. Welcome back.
Thank you, Nakel. Silos are one of the most durable organizational problems I've ever encountered. They survive restructures, leadership changes, and even major platform upgrades.
Maria Alvarez is a data governance leader with first-hand experience in the part people underestimate, the politics. The technical work matters, but governance is where you confront the incentives and the fear. Maria, welcome.
Thanks, Nakel. This topic is exactly where data governance stops being theoretical and becomes very, very real.
Jonas Richter is our data ethics and compliance specialist. Jonas brings the nuance that we need, because not every boundary is bad. Some separations are required for privacy, security, and regulation. Jonas, glad you're here.
Happy to be part of this. If we treat all silos as evil, we'll create new risks while trying to solve old ones.
And Kwame Mensah is an intelligence systems architect who's built integrated systems in environments where fragmentation was not just expensive, but existential. Kwame, welcome.
Great to be here, Nakel. When you've seen what shared intelligence can do, it becomes hard to tolerate the old way.
Let's anchor the conversation. People hear silos, and they nod, but it stays abstract. Dr. Zhou, when you say silo tax, what do you mean in plain terms, and where does the cost actually come from?
I think of the silo tax as what you pay when decisions get made with partial truth. The missing information often exists inside the company, but it's locked in a different department, different system, different definition, or simply a different meeting. And the tax shows up at least 3 ways. First, direct costs, the obvious financial hits when a decision is wrong because it lacked context. Second, opportunity cost, value you never create because the cross-functional insight never forms. Third, coordination costs, the enormous time and energy spent reconciling competing versions of reality. The painful part is that most organizations don't track any of this systematically. So the tax keeps getting paid because it stays invisible.
Maria, take us one layer deeper. If silos are so costly, why do they appear everywhere? What creates them, without assuming anyone is trying to sabotage the company?
Silos form for reasons that make sense on day one. Specialization is real. Marketing needs deep focus on marketing. Finance needs deep focus on finance. Expertise grows inside boundaries. Then software hardens the boundary. You buy a CRM for sales, an ERP for finance, a WMS for warehouses, a ticketing platform for service. Each system is optimized for that function. And integration is usually treated like a later problem. Metrics also push silos. If I'm judged on my department's numbers, I invest in my department's definitions, dashboards, and reporting. My version of truth becomes my protection. Over time, history piles up. Reports, spreadsheets, data marts, handoffs, workarounds. After a decade or two, the silo isn't even a conscious choice anymore. It's an inheritance.
Jonas, here's where people can get simplistic. They hear, break silos, and interpret it as, make everything visible to everyone. Are there times silos are actually the responsible choice?
Yes, and it's crucial to say that clearly. Some separations exist for legitimate reasons. Privacy boundaries, for example. HR information about employees should not become casually accessible. Sensitive customer information, like health data, shouldn't leak into marketing just because a new platform makes it easy. Security boundaries matter too. Certain financial projections or competitive intelligence need restrictions. And in some industries, information barriers are legally required. Financial services has well-known Chinese walls for conflict of interest reasons. So the real question is not whether to have boundaries. It's whether a boundary is protecting something essential, or whether it's just an artifact of history, politics, or technical limitation.
Kwame, give us a clean test. How do you tell the difference between a healthy boundary and a dysfunctional silo?
I use one question: does the separation improve decision quality or degrade it? If separation prevents harm, like privacy violations, unethical access, regulatory breaches, then the boundary is productive. But if separation causes people to make worse decisions because they're missing context, then it's a dysfunctional silo. In your skincare story, every function could have made a better call with cross-functional intelligence. Marketing could have made promises the operation could actually keep. Supply chain would have planned for the real demand pattern. Finance would have flagged margin risk earlier. The data existed. It was just trapped.
So now we've named the enemy. Let's open it up and see how it works. Kwame, when you audit an organization, where do you actually see the silo tax show up? What are the mechanisms?
I typically see 6 recurring mechanisms. One is delayed detection. A problem becomes visible in one area, but it takes weeks to reach the others who need to know. Customer service sees complaints rising. Sales finds out only after churn hits the pipeline. Inventory issues build in the warehouse. Finance doesn't feel the cash drag until the close. 2 is conflicting actions. Each function makes locally rational decisions that collide at the system level. Marketing runs a promotion the supply chain can't fulfill. Product releases something service can't support. Everyone is acting sensibly in isolation. Together it becomes chaos. 3 is redundant investment. Multiple groups build the same capability independently because they can't see what already exists elsewhere. You end up with 3 segmentation models, for forecasting pipelines, several, single sources of truth, that all conflict. 4 is reconciliation overhead. The moment teams do need to align, they discover their numbers don't match. They spend days or weeks not deciding, but arguing about definitions and data lineage. 5 is decision latency. Cross-functional choices require cross-functional information. If assembling that information takes too long, the decision window closes. The market moves while your organization is still preparing the slide deck. And 6 is innovation blindness. Many breakthroughs come from combining signals that don't normally meet, service complaints plus supplier constraints plus usage data plus pricing behavior. Silos stop the combination, so the insight never exists.
Listeners are going to ask the money question: how expensive is this, really? Because it's easy to agree in theory and still treat it like a second-tier problem. Kwame, how do you quantify it?
It's hard to be exact because so many costs are hidden inside normal work. But you can measure pieces, and those pieces add up. One manufacturer actually tracked reconciliation time for a quarter. They found 2,300 person-hours spent just getting teams to agree on the same numbers before decisions. That's real labor cost, and it's only one mechanism. A financial services firm measured the time on cross-functional decisions. Before integration, average time was 34 days. After building integrated intelligence, it dropped to 11 days. They valued that speed, faster approvals, faster responses, fewer missed opportunities, at several million a year. A retailer found that delayed demand signals between marketing and supply chain created excess inventory that cost them about $12 million annually. When I zoom out across the organizations I've studied, the total silo tax tends to land around 3 to 7% of operating expense. So if you're a billion-dollar company, that can easily mean tens of millions a year.
Dr. Zhou, if the silo tax can be that large, why doesn't it trigger a full-scale response? Why does it keep surviving?
Because it hides in plain sight. It doesn't sit on a line item labeled fragmentation. It shows up as scattered symptoms, and organizations blame the symptoms instead of the underlying integration failure. There's also distributed accountability. Everyone contributes to the tax, but nobody owns it. Marketing doesn't feel supply chains carrying costs. Service doesn't feel finance's margin compression. The whole company pays, but no single function has the mandate to fix it. Then there's technical debt. Integrating systems built independently over many years is genuinely difficult. Definitions conflict. Data refresh cycles differ. The plumbing is messy. And we can't ignore politics. Integration increases transparency, and transparency changes the power balance. Some groups benefit from being the only ones who can interpret the numbers. And finally, timing. Integration costs you now and pays you later. In organizations rewarded for short-term performance, initiatives with delayed payback struggle to survive.
Maria, bring governance into this. People treat data governance like a compliance function or a set of policies. But you're saying governance can either keep silos alive or become the tool that breaks them. How?
Governance becomes silo-enabling when it reinforces ownership as territorial control. It sounds like marketing owns this dataset, sales owns that dataset, and nobody should touch what they don't own. That structure often protects existing dysfunction. Silo-breaking governance treats data as an enterprise asset. It starts from the decision need: who needs access to make a good decision, and how do we make access safe and consistent? It also forces definition alignment. If one team's active customer is another team's engaged prospect, integrated dashboards will be nonsense. Governance creates a shared vocabulary: what counts as a customer, what counts as revenue, what counts as a product. And it sets standards for quality, access, and change coordination so that integration doesn't collapse under its own complexity.
Jonas, governance has a second job: don't accidentally create a compliance disaster while trying to create insight. Where do organizations get this wrong?
A common mistake is assuming that connecting systems is automatically permitted. Many privacy frameworks are built on purpose limitation. Data collected for one purpose shouldn't be used for unrelated purposes without a lawful basis. Integration can quietly break that rule. For instance, a customer shares health-related information to use a wellness feature. Then the data lands in a shared platform and marketing can see it. Even if nobody intended misuse, the platform made it possible, and that's already a failure. The fix is to design compliance into the integration. Classify data by sensitivity. Tag data with allowed purposes. Enforce access controls that technically prevent restricted queries from returning sensitive attributes. And maintain auditing so you can prove who accessed what and why.
Alright, diagnosis is helpful, but listeners want the path out. Let's turn the story. Dr. Zhou, if you walk into an organization that's trapped in silos, what's the first move? And please don't say, buy a platform.
I won't. The starting point is decision clarity. Before you integrate any data, you have to identify which decisions actually require cross-functional intelligence. I use decision mapping. You take the important recurring decisions, pricing, product launch, capital allocation, resource planning, and you map who is involved, who is impacted, what information each function contributes, where that information lives, and what's missing from the current decision process. That map shows you where integration has the highest payoff. You don't need to integrate everything. You need to integrate what's necessary for the decisions that shape performance.
Kwame, once the organization knows which decisions matter, now we can talk architecture. What are the main patterns you see for building cross-functional intelligence?
There are 3 common patterns, and the right one depends on context. One is an integration layer, a shared platform that pulls from functional systems and provides a cross-functional view. Teams still operate their CRMs and ERPs, but you have a place where the organization can ask integrated questions. 2 is event streaming. Instead of nightly batches, functions publish events in near real time. A purchase happens, inventory drops, a complaint is filed, a shipment is delayed. Other systems subscribe and react. It's faster, but it's more complex to implement well. 3 is a decision hub approach. You don't try to integrate everything. You integrate the data needed for a specific decision context. A pricing hub, for example, assembles demand, costs, inventory, and competition into one decision view. It's narrower, often quicker, and easier to prove ROI.
Maria, if we integrate data, we also integrate the consequences. Definitions drift, quality issues spread, and suddenly nobody trusts anything. What are the governance essentials to prevent that?
4 things. First, definition alignment. If terms don't mean the same thing across functions, shared dashboards become shared confusion. Second, quality accountability. If one team's data quality is poor, that problem becomes everyone's problem once it's integrated. You need clear ownership of fixing quality issues at the source. Third, access management. Integration expands who could see what. Governance must ensure that the new possible is still appropriate. And fourth, change coordination. When finance changes a margin calculation, it ripples. When product changes a definition, it ripples. You need mechanisms to communicate, assess impacts, and keep trust intact.
Jonas, how do you reconcile, on the ground, the need for integration with the need for separation? People tend to frame it as a choice, either we're fully open or fully locked down.
That's the wrong framing. The goal is appropriate transparency. The right information to the right people for the right reasons. Often the best approach is to provide filtered views instead of raw access. Marketing might need patterns and segments, not sensitive individual attributes. Service might need the interaction history for the customer they are serving, not the entire database. Finance may need payment history without behavioral detail. It's more work than either extreme, but it's what maturity looks like.
Now we have to deal with the part that makes grown executives sweat, humans. Dr. Zhou, why do people cling to silos even when the logic is obvious?
Because silos aren't just structures. They're safety. Information is power, and power protects status. If your team is the only one that truly understands a dataset, you have leverage. Integration spreads that leverage. Opacity also hides weakness. When performance can't be compared across functions, it's harder for others to challenge your metrics or your results. Integration makes visibility unavoidable. And functional identity is strong. People build careers around being the best marketer, the best finance leader, the best operator. Integration asks them to think as part of a system, not just a craft. That threatens identity.
So how do you move people through that? What actually works in the real world?
3 levers tend to work consistently. First, make the invisible visible. Quantify the silo tax in the organization's own language. Show the hours lost, the decisions delayed, the money left on the table. Second, align incentives. If people are measured solely on departmental targets, they'll optimize locally. Add shared metrics where success requires collaboration. Hold marketing closer to revenue outcomes, not just awareness. Tie operations and finance to customer experience outcomes, not just cost. Third, build coalitions. Don't start by trying to convince everyone. Start with the leaders who already feel the pain and want change. Build a visible success with them. Then let that proof travel.
Maria, leadership signals. This is so underrated. What do leaders do that either strengthens silos or breaks them?
Leaders teach the organization what matters through the questions they ask. If a CEO only accepts functional scorecards, the company learns to report in silos. If the CEO insists on integrated views, customer journey performance across marketing, sales, and service, people will suddenly find ways to connect the dots. Meeting design matters too. If the cadence is always marketing first, then sales, then finance, you've trained the organization to stack reports, not synthesize reality. And budgets speak. If integration keeps losing funding to functional priorities, that's the loudest signal of all.
Kwame, give us the operating system of integration. Beyond data platforms, what processes and roles make it real?
You need new coordination mechanisms. One is cross-functional ownership, roles responsible for outcomes that span departments, like an end-to-end customer experience owner. 2 is shared rituals, recurring cross-functional reviews focused on integrated metrics and decisions. Not sequential presentations, but a single story of performance across the system. 3 is escalation paths. When functions disagree, say marketing and supply chain dispute a demand forecast, you need a defined resolution process. Otherwise you get stalemates and late crises. And 4 is integration champions inside functions, people whose job explicitly includes spotting cross-functional impacts early and connecting the right counterparts before issues become expensive.
Jonas, transparency is a double-edged sword. It helps you see, but it also makes people feel exposed. How do you create enough safety so teams don't fight the visibility?
You treat transparency as a learning tool, not a weapon. Blameless review is important. When integration reveals a failure, you focus on improving the system rather than hunting an individual. People share information when sharing doesn't feel like self-sabotage. You also manage exposure thoughtfully. Not everyone needs access to everything. Some transparency can be vertical. Leaders can see integrated performance without turning every metric into peer-to-peer scrutiny. And visibility needs to feel fair. If one function is exposed while another stays opaque, trust breaks. Symmetry matters.
Let's make this tangible. I want stories where integration actually changed the outcome. Dr. Zhou, share one transformation that stuck with you.
A regional bank in Southeast Asia was dealing with customer attrition. Marketing had engagement signals. Service had complaint data. Product had usage patterns. Each group analyzed churn and came to a different conclusion. Marketing wanted more campaigns. Service wanted training. Product wanted new features. And each proposal sounded reasonable because each team was looking at a slice. But when we connected the journey across channels, a different story appeared. Customers were leaving after a specific sequence, a failed digital transaction, then a branch visit that didn't fix it, then a call center interaction where they had to repeat the whole story. No single function could see the full chain. With integrated intelligence, they discovered that most churn followed that pattern. The solution wasn't better marketing or better service in isolation. It was continuity, making sure context traveled with the customer.
Kwame, take us to a different environment. Where did integration create measurable performance change?
An agricultural supply company serving smallholder farmers across East Africa had a recurring issue: allocating seeds and fertilizer efficiently. Procurement planned on history. Logistics executed the plan. Sales sold what showed up. Credit extended based on sales outcomes. But reality kept changing. Weather shifts planting windows, disease outbreaks reshape input needs, market prices influence what farmers can commit to, and logistics capacity varies. We built an integrated decision system that combined weather, disease monitoring, market prices, credit history, and logistics capacity. Allocation decisions became smarter: what's needed now, what's available, who can pay, and can it be delivered in time. The results were concrete: less waste from misallocation, improved repayment because inputs matched real need, and fewer costly emergency reallocations in logistics. None of that was achievable through functional optimization alone.
Maria, governance stories rarely get celebrated, but they decide whether integration holds. Give us a case where governance was the difference.
A pharmaceutical company had acquired a biotech and needed to operate as one business. Both organizations had systems, definitions, and reporting practices that looked similar from a distance but conflicted in the details. Leadership couldn't answer basic questions consistently: combined pipeline, total R&D investment, even how to count patients across the combined portfolio. The data existed, but the words didn't match. We ran a definition alignment effort that lasted months. Cross-functional working groups from major entities, patient, trial, product, revenue, argued through edge cases, negotiated power dynamics, and eventually standardized meaning. It was slow and sometimes tense, but the output was foundational. Once the vocabulary stabilized, integrated reporting became trustworthy, collaboration improved, and the post-merger silo tax that usually drags acquisitions down was far smaller than expected.
Jonas, we've talked about preserving legitimate separation. Give us a practical example where integration happened, but sensitive boundaries were kept intact.
A financial services firm wanted cross-functional customer analytics across banking, lending, and insurance. The business case made sense, but the data included highly sensitive elements: health information, salary details, and investment positions. So we designed a tiered structure. Tier 1 was behavioral patterns, which could be broadly integrated and used across teams. Tier 2 was financial indicators, integrated but aggregated, so teams could understand signals without exposing individual-level details outside the originating group. Tier 3 was the most sensitive attributes, which remained tightly siloed and accessible only to authorized personnel. The firm still gained cross-functional intelligence for engagement and recommendations, but avoided turning integration into a privacy breach waiting to happen.
Now we close the way we always do, with tactical edge, actions an executive can take this week. Not a 6-month program. This week. Dr. Zhou, what's first?
Pick the most important cross-functional decision your organization makes repeatedly. Then map the information flow as it exists today. Where does the data originate? How does it travel? Where does it stall? And what's missing at the moment of decision? That one map is usually enough to reveal the highest value integration opportunity.
Maria.
Choose one shared term: customer, revenue, product, deal, and ask each function to define it in writing. The mismatches you uncover will explain a lot of the friction you experience, and they'll give you a concrete governance problem to solve instead of arguing about alignment in general.
Jonas.
Before you connect new data sources, do a privacy and compliance check on the plan. What restrictions apply? What purposes are permitted? What access controls and auditing are required? Build the safeguards into the integration design at the start, because retrofitting controls later is expensive and often incomplete.
Kwame, take us home.
Measure your reconciliation tax. For 1 month, track how much time teams spend getting numbers to match across functions before a decision can move forward. Convert time into dollars. Then show leadership. A quantified cost creates urgency in a way that a philosophical argument never will.
Let's synthesize the signal. The silo tax is the cost of running an organization on fragmented truth. It drains performance through delayed detection, conflicting actions, duplicated effort, reconciliation work, slow decisions, and innovation you never even realize you missed. Silos often form naturally, from specialization, software choices, accountability structures, and accumulated history. Some boundaries should absolutely remain in place for privacy, security, and regulation. The goal isn't radical transparency. It's intentional design. Breaking dysfunctional silos starts with decisions, not data. Identify which decisions need cross-functional intelligence, then build the right technical pattern, an integration layer, an event stream, or a decision hub, backed by governance that aligns definitions, protects quality, manages access, and coordinates change. And none of it works without the human plan, making the silo tax visible, aligning incentives, building coalitions, creating new coordination mechanisms, and building safety around transparency. Because the organizations that get this right can do something their competitors can't, they can see the whole system and act as one. Every function informed by the intelligence of every other function. Decisions optimized for the enterprise, not the department. Dr. Lien Zhou, Maria Alvarez, Jonas Richter, Kwame Mensah, thank you for bringing the depth today.
Thank you, Nakel.
Great conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Next week on the Intelligence Edge, predictive versus prescriptive, knowing versus doing. Why prediction without action can turn into expensive entertainment, and how organizations move from forecasting what might happen to recommending what should be done. Until then, I'm Nakel Nikima. Make better decisions.